Hi guys, I'm Danny, and I started a Sunday gym because I've noticed lately that people tend to go to colleges and universities without actually knowing why they're there. Afterwards, starting jobs that are unfulfilling. So I'm interviewing different professionals to see what they have to say and to share their experience and knowledge with you. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right. Chris, welcome to the show. I'm honored to have you, man with such experience, very interesting background. Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on your show. I greatly appreciate it.
I'm absolutely honored. The podcast will be focused on three main questions. What do you do for a living? How did you get there? And how did you knew that this was the way to go? So it will be absolutely impossible for me to cover everything you've done over the years, but tell us what you do for a living and let's go from there.
Let me start from the other end. How did you get there? You don't know. You end up where you end up. Um, you know, my son went to university for biology, and now he structures corporate loans. A completely
Uh,
different field.
That's
Most
that's
people,
180. Yeah.
yeah, most people go into a field 60, well, in the United States, I should say, 60% of people who graduate from university end up in a field other than what they went to university for. And
Same,
that's
same percentage in Europe, by the way. Around that percent. More
yeah,
than half.
yeah, more than half go into a field other than what they studied for. So the other thing is, um, well, going to university is no guarantee of success.
No.
Just like not going to university doesn't guarantee you're not going to be successful. I think
Well,
you'll find
there are no
I
guarantees in general about anything.
yeah, I found that most people are successful because of a broad range of experiences that they have either survived or overcome. Quick side note: I went into the military. I was headed for Princeton, but I ended up enlisting in the army. I landed in Germany in a room, and they put me in a room with in a barracks room with there were 3 Mexicans and 4 Puerto Ricans, and yeah, everyone was speaking Spanish. And so I grabbed a piece of paper and I said, "Hey, what does that word mean?" And those few words turned into phrases, and those phrases turned into sentences, and those sentences turned into conversations. Um, I got a broader range of Spanish than if I had studied Spanish at university, because I was interacting with people from uh, with well, they were American citizens, but they were from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, um, Colombians, um, Mexicans, people from all over the Spanish-speaking world. And so I became accustomed to different accents as well, and learned the customs of other countries, a broad range of countries. And while I was in Germany, while my friends were out drinking, um, I took my time and I learned how to speak German. So I came away after 2 years at that unit speaking fluent Spanish and fluent German, better than I would have done it at a university, I suppose.
You basically learned two languages without setting foot in a
In a
school.
university, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely remarkable.
yeah, so the question, how did you get there? Well, you never know how you're going to get there, because you need to have a map to kind of guide you, but you don't know where you're going anyway, right?
Yep.
You're 20 years old, 22, 24 years old. All you're thinking about mostly is beer and what's on TV tonight. What game is playing on Friday, or does that girl's dress look right? Uh, you, you don't know where you're going until you get there. You have sort of general direction. We're heading north, we're heading northeast, but you don't know where you're going to end up. Um, with me, I lived in Africa. I lived in Central America. I lived in the Middle East. I lived in Europe. I spent half of my time, half of my life overseas. It surprised me. I would have never guessed I'd end up in Las Vegas. That just, it was never even a consideration. And so here I am.
When I saw your LinkedIn profile, the first thing that came to my mind is that this guy is basically like a character from a novel of Ernest Hemingway. That because there was so much there. It's simply remarkable, and I just knew that you would have so many stories.
I grew up in a very small town in Pennsylvania, where people lived and died. And that's what I kind of felt like would happen to me if I stayed there. I would live there and then die there. And I said, no, that's not going to happen to me. I graduated from high school 2 weeks later. I was in Army basic training.
And you were 17, 18 years old when you graduated high school, I assume. 19.
Yeah, I had just turned 19. Graduated from high school, went right into the military, went to Europe, traveled around Europe while I was in the military. It started something, it sparked something in me, which was, this is a big world and I'm going to see as much of it as I can. So I do have, I have experiences that most people in the United States have only seen in the movies.
In the world.
Yeah. And now the first question, I forget, what was the first question?
What do you do for a living?
Well, we're working now. Let me go back a little bit. I actually started in television when I was 16, working at a local television station.
Like an internship?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I went into the military to become a photographer and videographer. And then when I left the military, I continued down that path. I worked a lot in Europe. I worked in Africa, lived in Nigeria for a while, Ghana, Zambia, and eventually I realized that just things were changing. The industry was changing. I really enjoyed the military, and then I joined the Marine Corps. After traveling around for 4 or 5 years, I joined the Marine Corps and ended up in Panama, ended up in the Middle East, got out of the military, worked in film and industry. Now, after I retired, my wife is from Panama. After I retired, we traveled around a bit until that became more bother than it was worth. Then we started Vet Films. We were teaching military veterans, especially veterans with PTSD or veterans who had combat disabilities, how to tell their stories in video and photography. And we did that for a while until the COVID emergency shut us down.
Yep.
And now we've started Red TV. We're trying to develop a news and entertainment network that would be on par with Netflix and other broadcasters.
If you have a link, you can send it to me and I'll put the link in the description below when I upload the video so that people can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the second question, what was the second question?
How'd you get where you are right now? Yeah.
Very broad circular path. There's, I think the worst advice anybody can ever give somebody is follow your passion. Don't do that. That's a recipe for disaster.
The guy who was before you, who I took an episode with, said exactly that. I'm going to have hell in the comment section in LinkedIn when I upload those 2 episodes.
Yeah, no, don't follow your passion first before anything else. You may have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
I have.
Okay. And it starts off with security, food, and then it moves into social networking, and then it moves into self-actualization. When you hit self-actualization, That's when you can follow your passion. When you have enough money in the bank, when you have the resources to follow your passion. But listen, if you're young, if you're 18, 19, 20, and you follow your passion, you're going to fall flat because you don't have the experience to make it work for you. The most successful people, look, let me think of something, tax attorneys. Who wakes up in the morning and says, oh God, I'm so happy I'm a tax attorney? What 16-year-old has sat around and said, man, I can't wait till I can get into college and start studying tax law? I was reading last night until 3 o'clock in the morning about section 7B 21, line 21.7 that discusses deductions for uniforms.
I was kind of like that because when I was 16, I knew I was going to be in a financial department. I knew I was going to do what I'm doing now.
Okay, but listen, the best advice is find something that you are competent at and there's low competition in. Everybody wants to do the fun stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not where the money is because there's too much competition. The money is where people don't want to work. So
Yep.
if you're doing tax law, nobody thinks about tax law. They don't want to get involved in it. It's complicated. It's frustrating. And that's where the money is, though. Tax attorneys make a lot of money. People go into the law profession thinking, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be helping the world. And then they find out what they're doing is getting reduced sentences for pedophiles and sexual abusers. And that's not what they had planned to do. That's not what their passion is. Their passion isn't to get lower reduced sentences for pedophiles. They wanted to work in the law. Well, eventually everybody in the law field finds out that they're there simply for the money. So that generally that's not their passion. Their passion, don't follow your passion. Follow something that you're competent at. Find that one thing that you're good at. And it takes about 10,000 hours of work to become good at something. And you put those 3 or 4 years in, those 4 or 5 years perhaps, and then you realize, well, I'm good at this. And when you're good at something, it's fun to do it.
Yep.
It's still not your passion. You're doing inventory at a warehouse isn't your passion, but you're good at it. And if you're good at it, it's easy. And you like the people you work with, it's not too bad. And eventually you have the resources to follow your passion, because your passion is maybe owning a yacht and or owning a large boat and going out every weekend, or your passion might be hunting. Well, there's no money in hunting. Your passion might be marathon running. There's no money. Nobody's going to pay you to be a marathon runner.
Yep.
If you're at top 0.1%, you can get endorsements. But the other, the rest of us, those 99.9 are not going to get endorsements. So yeah, I tell everybody, don't follow your passion. Find out what your capacities are, what your capabilities are, what you're good at. For me, it was languages, and I didn't realize that until it was far past what.
Didn't you study other languages in high school?
No.
Oh.
No, and I didn't realize until I came into contact with other languages. I grew up in America. We don't study foreign languages.
Yeah. I think some parts of the United States studies French, but I'm not certain.
No, I doubt it.
Oh.
I think everybody's required. I think now everybody is required to take 1 year of French or Spanish. But by and large, Americans don't learn foreign languages, and that is a terrible, terrible thing. Of any country, the United States should be very intensively pushing foreign languages.
It's very useful. It's remarkably useful. And I've also.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
I kind of lost my train of thought though, but find
I
out.
was following it and I actually had a question. It's my personal observation, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Uh, I've noticed it for the last decade or so, maybe even before, but I haven't saw this before. People don't really know themselves. Now, you basically you felt that you're good with languages. That's why you keep pushing through those 10,000 hours of work. But people don't tend to know themselves. At least this is a situation in the EU. I assume it's worldwide, from what I've been hearing. And this is basically why I created this network, because I wanted to show different examples from different countries, so that people can look at a video and say, hey, you know what, that might be me. And I believe that this is one of the logos of the podcast. Just know yourself. Do you think that this is one of the reasons we're in that situation right now, that people don't know themselves?
Perhaps. Life has become too easy. And I'll point out two things. In the medieval, let's go back to the medieval times. What was your profession going to be?
A blacksmith, probably, or a soldier.
No, whatever your dad was, whatever your father did, or whatever the person who controlled your life did. That's what your profession was going to be. If your father was a butcher, you were going to become a butcher.
Yep.
And now that's not the case. I remember when I was 10, there was a fellow that he was a friend of my friend of the family. He fixed sewing machines. He said, Chris, I'm going to tell you something. You can always rely on this. If you learn how to fix sewing machines, you will always have a job. Do you know when the last time I saw a sewing machine was? Now, back in the 60s, the 70s, and the 50s, 60s, 70s, everybody had a sewing machine. Every mother at home did sewing. Every young girl growing up learned how to sew. And he was right at that point.
Yep.
You know, learn how to, if you know how to fix a sewing machine, you're going to have a job. Later on, somebody told me, learn how to type. If you learn how to type, you will always have a job. And that was probably good advice up until about 10 years ago, when voice to text started becoming a thing.
Yep.
And now I see people writing entire scripts without touching a typewriter. They simply speak into a microphone and it comes on the screen. Now they got to go back and correct it. But by and large, you don't need to learn how to type. Go back about 300, 400, 500 years. We were hardwired to survive. That was all we ever did. Go out and find food. Try to keep warm. Try not to get eaten tonight. And now our lives are literally, everything is done for us.
Yep.
If I want to eat food, I don't even have to go to the kitchen. I can just go to my phone, tap in some numbers. It's paid for through the phone, and it's delivered to the door. The hardest part is getting up off of the couch to walk to the door. And
not only in that aspect, it's I don't know how it's in the States. I only assume it's similar, but it's remarkably easy to switch your education, to start learning something new, even from Google or something like that, or to find a nice course, and to change your job with something else in a matter of half a year or maybe 1 year. That never happened before.
Yeah, 6 months. Become a coder in 6 months. Listen, you don't even need training. People always ask me, how do I get into the film industry? I worked a lot of years in the film industry, mostly on the finance side. And I'm going to tell you, the easiest way to get in is have friends who have money. That's it. Have money.
That's applicable for a lot of industries.
Yeah, and I'm not real familiar with a lot of industries. I'm familiar with the film industry, and I'm telling you, if you have money, you're in, and that's all there is to it. A few years ago, there was a young guy, and he had several friends who were all successful. They graduated from university together, and in 2 years, he had done very little. He went to all of these friends that he had at university during a reunion, and I think it might have been the 5-year reunion. His buddies, and he said, "Look, we're going to finance 5 films. He said, if one film goes bad, you've lost your money. If you're financing 3 films, 2 might go bad, but that 1 is going to cover your losses. If you're doing 5 films, even if 4 go bad, if the 1 goes well, if the 1 makes money, you're going to break even or do better. Well, they were all in. They were all in for $10,000, $20,000, $50,000. One was a practicing, I forget what, he came up with $100,000. But they took this money. He took the money, went back to LA. They made 5 films. They financed 5 films. 3 of the 5 films did well. 2 of them lost money, but 3 did well. And he came back to his buddies, and they had a party, and he was passing out the checks. And this guy who barely graduated from university, who was unemployed for most of the time from the time he graduated from university until that reunion, was all of a sudden, the top of the heap. He was the one who was the rainmaker, the money maker. And so you're in the end analysis, it's, are you able to create value? So an employer is going to hire you not because he needs, look, if all you want to do is answer the phone, you're a minimum wage employee, you're trading hours for dollars. But if you want to build that career, you have to develop some form of value. You have to provide value.
Absolutely. And I have that story about 8 years ago. I was in a little bit of a tough spot. I was even living with my parents. And I wasn't able to change my job or anything. My father sat me down and said, listen, truth be told, I wouldn't hire you, and you wouldn't hire yourself because you don't have skills. Get some skills. Then everybody will want to hire you. He was right, Absolutely. And this is really why I kind of started learning as much as possible about anything I could get my hands on.
Yeah, in the end analysis, you get to where you are if you're going to be successful, by creating value for yourself, for somebody else, for the company you work for. I often tell my grandson, he's 10 years old, I say, look at this guy. And we live in, in southwest United States. There is a large population of homeless people. We were driving through Las Vegas, and there was a guy on the corner of the street looking for quarters and dimes. He had held a sign up, said anything helps. And I said, well, look at him. He hasn't had a shower in 3 or 4 days. He hasn't eaten yet today. This is not what he planned. He didn't plan to be a homeless person. I don't know anything about him. He may have mental issues. He may be an alcoholic or a drug addict. He may have a master's degree in accounting. I don't know. But whatever happened, this is not what he planned for. And that's exactly the point. You can't plan for massive success. You can't plan for massive failure. I'm sorry, let me correct myself. You can plan for it, but it's not what you planned for.
Yeah, I agree with you absolutely. A few years ago, there were protests in Paris, and President Macron, I think, yeah, that was his name. And he was talking to the folks that were protesting, and one of them said, I can't find a job. I've been jobless for 2 years. And the president said, okay, what do you do for a living? He said, well, I'm a gardener. He said, oh, over there's a sign at a bar that they're looking for a bartender. Okay, you can't be a gardener, but yeah, you can do that.
Exactly.
So, it's a dynamic world, and we have to be dynamic people. It's basically like that. And he was basically correct. Like, yeah, you are certified gardener, but you have to do what you have to do to survive.
Right. And listen, being a bartender is not a bad job, right?
I know.
Unless you're alcoholic, it's the wrong job for you.
Best 3 years of my life.
But we've lost this sense that we have to provide, that we have to do what we have to do to survive. And as I had said, for hundreds of thousands of years, our forefathers, going back a thousand generations, thousands of generations, had to get up in the morning when the sun rose, with a spear, leave a cave or leave a small hut. And the first thing they did when they stuck their head out was look for danger, look for something that was going to kill them. Well, okay, nothing killed me yet. Now I've got to find food. I've got to feed my family. There has to be enough food for at least today. I hope I can get enough food for a couple of days, and then I can relax a little bit later on tonight. But there was this overriding sense that it was do or die, and literally
Yep.
do or die. And today everything is done for us.
Yep, even in developing countries as well. I'm watching news, I'm talking to people. Things are improving basically everywhere, and it's shameful to have so many opportunities and just to lose them. There is, I remember my father showed me an article, it was a long time ago, about 7,000-year-old Sumerian clay text on a clay, where a man is talking to the priest, the Sumerian priest, saying, I'm a little bit worried for my son because he doesn't like to work. He drinks too much wine and he's chasing girls. I don't know what to do. You have to help me straighten him up. This is not the way to be a man. That was 7,000 years ago. I'm pretty sure that I can find a father who has the same worries right now about
Yeah,
his.
of course, yeah.
We haven't changed that much in that department.
We haven't, yeah. People don't change. People don't change. People will always be the same. There'll always be those people who get by one way or another, but there are always opportunities, and I think we fail to look for the opportunities. And look, I'm retired. I retired 12 years ago when I retired when I was 50. And now I'm retiring again. I start collecting my Social Security. Meanwhile, I have started a company that's, I hope, is going to help a lot of people. Right. So there are a lot of actors, there are a lot of script writers, there are a lot of camera people, just people in general who are willing to work. And I'm going to help them. I'm creating value for them. We've got investors, and I'm creating value for those investors because they're dropping money on this and hoping that at some point they're going to see a return on their investment. Well, they're not hoping, they know. My name was involved, so they know. They wouldn't be investing money if there were not almost a guarantee of return on investment. And of course, the other issue is the audience at home. People who are sitting in their living room saying, God, I've watched everything there is on Netflix. I saw everything new that came out on Tubi, those two movies. And what's on Red TV? Let's take a look at Red TV. So we're creating value for people who are just sitting at home. And ultimately, that's what creates success, is creating value. And if you can create that value, there's going to be money in it. Maybe not right away, but eventually. But you've got to take those steps to create that value. If you're an employee, you have to create value for your employer. If you're a husband, you have to create value for your wife. Look, it's not unlike dating a woman. So if this woman, you see this gorgeous woman at the, over there sitting on the park bench, and you want to go over to her, but look, if you smell like a skunk and you haven't shaved in 2 days and you don't have a job, sure, you're a brilliant guitar player, but you don't even have a band. What is the package that you're presenting to her? What is the value that you are creating in her life? You've got to create value in somebody's life to be part of, to take in that partnership.
I was taught that there is very little difference between the relationship with the job and the relationship with the spouse, the wife. I mean, you have to be decent, you have to be loyal, you have to do whatever you have to do. You have to be patient, you have to raise your voice when you have to, but that's about it. And that's actually the example I had when I was growing up. But that's not the example a lot of people have today in their homes. That's also another issue, but that was basically how I was taught. Just don't act like a donkey, and things will be fine.
Well, my wife and I have been married for 32 years. We just celebrated our 32nd anniversary.
Congratulations. So that was 1 year before I was born. I was born in 1990.
Well, we've had a great relationship. We've got 2 great kids and 4 grandkids, 1 more coming.
Congratulations.
But I look back and I say, yeah, I've got a great life. And, my wife says, well, why don't you just stay at home, enjoy what you have? And I don't know. I want to do more. There's always the opportunity to do more if I stop
And you
working.
have the energy.
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
You have the energy to do it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could stay at home and watch TV, but I don't. I get up in the morning. I do my 5 miles. In the evenings, I lift weights. My wife, likewise, she runs 5 miles in the morning. She lifts weights. I correct myself. She does boot camps 4 nights out of the week.
Nice.
Yeah, and physical fitness is a big part of our life. But also, this is a woman who didn't speak a word of English when we met, and she came to the United States, and now she worked really hard at learning English. This is going back to the idea of creating value. So she learned to speak English and now speaks English as well as any university professor. The point is, once again, as you so brilliantly illustrated, there's almost the same relationship between your job and your spouse. My point is, you have to create value in either case. And you do have a lot of correlations between the 2 of them.
Absolutely. Chris, thank you very much for being here. I can make 5 episodes with men like you, because you have so much to cover. It was an absolute honor to talk to you and to listen to your stories and your point of view. You can send me the link so I can put it in the description down. Thank you again, and I'd like to wish you a remarkable day.
Hey, thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here. Pleasure talking to you. I did want. What city are you in Bulgaria?
Sofia, the capital.
Sofia. Okay. Yeah, I loved Sofia when I was there.
When was that?
Back in the communist days.
Yeah.
And I think I had mentioned to you earlier, I wanted to buy a house, maybe in sunny Shore in
You mentioned that.
Borgas or Varna. I had looked at Haskovo. And one of the places I nearly bought a house was in Montana. And I kept telling people I'm buying a house in Montana. And of course, in the United States.
It's not a good region right now, as far as I know.
I'm sorry?
It's not a very good region right now, as far as I know.
No, probably not. But I'm thinking 25 years back.
Yeah. Back then there was potential, but now mostly people tend to buy property in the capital, about as much as possible, with limited options. So things are people in Europe, basically, mostly Eastern Europe, Southeastern Europe. We have that mentality that we have to have property. We have to buy it no matter what. Even if it's something small, you have to be the owner of it. It's because it's a crossroad country. It's problematic region. So when you have something, you kind of sleep a little bit better at night.
Yeah.
That's the mentality here.
Again, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
If you want to add something else.
No, I was just going to say thank you for having me on your show. I greatly appreciate it. And I wish you the best of the rest of the week.
Thank you. Have a good one and all the best.
Guys, I hope this one was useful. Please follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Gap, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Ring the bell and all the good stuff. Have a nice week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.